Hey everyone, this is Karenology. You won't believe the insane drama that just unfolded. Let's get into it.
Moving to the suburbs was supposed to be a fresh start for my family. The quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and the promise of peaceful living made it seem like a dream come true, but it didn't take long for the dream to shatter. The homeowner association, led by the ever-demanding Karen, quickly turned our lives into a nightmare. It all began with our backyard barbecue. My family and I had invited a few friends over for a Sunday cookout. The smell of grilled ribs and laughter filled the air. But just as we were about to dig into our food, Karen marched into our yard, clipboard in hand. "This is illegal," she announced, her voice sharp enough to cut through the chatter. "You can't have a barbecue here. It violates Section 4.3 of the Homeowner Association rules." I stared at her in disbelief. "It's my property," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "We're not disturbing anyone." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Rules are rules. If you don't shut this down immediately, I'll be forced to report you." That was the beginning of the hostilities. Over the next few weeks, the Homeowner Association bombarded us with fines and notices. They claimed our barbecue setup violated community standards, even though we had checked the guidelines before moving in. The situation escalated when one of Karen's allies, a hot-headed neighbor named Tom, confronted us in our driveway. "Your dog is a menace," Tom shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at Max, our golden retriever. "He's been barking all night." "That's not true, Biederma," I replied. "Max sleeps inside at night. He's never caused any trouble." But Tom wouldn't back down. "If you don't keep that mutt in line, I will." I should have taken his threat more seriously. A few days later, we woke up to find Max limping and whimpering on the porch. He had been shot. My son, Jason, was inconsolable. "Who would do this?" he cried, cradling Max's head in his lap. I knew who. Confronting Tom seemed futile, but I couldn't let this go unanswered. I called the police, only to find Karen waiting for me with her own version of events. "He's lying," Karen told the officer, pointing at me. "That dog attacked Tom's kids. He's trying to shift the blame." The officer looked skeptical, but without evidence, there was little he could do. Karen's smug smile as the police left was enough to make my blood boil. It was clear that she and her cronies had the upper hand, for now. But I wasn't about to give up. I started digging into the Homeowner Association's rules and discovered a pattern of questionable fines and selective enforcement. It seemed Karen had a history of targeting specific families while ignoring violations by her friends. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about a barbecue or my dog. It was about standing up to a system designed to intimidate and control. As I prepared for the next Homeowner Association meeting, I knew this was only the beginning. Karen and her allies might think they'd won, but they had underestimated me. The battle for justice in our neighborhood was far from over. The Homeowner Association meeting was packed, and tension hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. I entered the community hall, clutching the stack of evidence I had painstakingly gathered over the past few weeks. Karen stood at the podium, exuding confidence as she addressed the crowd. Her followers filled the front rows, nodding at every word she said. I took a seat near the back, observing the faces around me, some wary, others openly hostile. "We've maintained the integrity of this neighborhood for years," Karen declared, her voice firm. "It's because of the Homeowner Association's rules and regulations that our community remains safe and orderly." Safe and orderly? Tell that to my injured dog, I thought bitterly. When Karen opened the floor for questions, I stood up, my heart pounding. "I have a few concerns," I began, holding up a copy of the association's bylaws, specifically about how these rules are being enforced. Karen's smile faltered. "Go ahead," she said, her tone icy. "According to Section 3.2, any changes to the association's rules must be approved by a majority vote," I continued. "But several recent fines, including the one for my barbecue, were issued under amendments that were never voted on. Care to explain?" The room erupted in murmurs. Karen's eyes narrowed. "Those amendments were made to address urgent issues," she said. "As president, I have the authority to act in the best interest of the community." "Best interest," I shot back, "or selective enforcement?" I held up a photo of Tom's backyard, which featured a massive grill and a fire pit, both technically against the same rules she had fined me for. "Why hasn't Tom received the same fines?" Karen's face turned red, but before she could respond, Tom himself stood up. "This isn't about me," he said, his voice rising. "This is about you causing problems for everyone else." "Problems?" I replied. My only problem is that the rules seem to apply differently depending on who you are. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. A few people nodded in agreement, while others glared at me. Karen banged her gavel. "Order," she demanded. "This is not the place for baseless accusations." "Baseless," I countered. "Then let's talk about the construction project on my property." The room went silent. I pulled out a set of documents showing a recent deal between the homeowner association and a local contractor. The project involved expanding a public walkway, but it encroached onto my backyard without my consent. "This contract," I said, holding up the papers, "was signed without my knowledge or approval. My property lines were altered, and I wasn't even notified." "How do you explain that?" Karen's expression darkened. "That walkway benefits the entire community," she said, "and your backyard was the most practical option." "Practical?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You mean convenient for your plans. This isn't about community improvement, it's about control." The tension in the room was palpable. Karen's supporters looked uneasy, while others began whispering to one another. I could see the cracks forming in her facade. But just as I felt a glimmer of hope, Karen played her trump card. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, addressing the room, "let's not forget that this man's dog attacked Tom's children. We are here to protect our residents from threats, not to indulge conspiracy theories." The room gasped. My fist clenched. "That's a lie," I said through gritted teeth. "Max has never harmed anyone." "Enough," Karen snapped. "If you have a problem with the association, take it to court. But until then, you're expected to follow the rules like everyone else." I left the meeting feeling defeated but not broken. Karen had won this round, but I knew I couldn't stop now. The fight wasn't just about me or my family anymore. It was about exposing the corruption at the heart of the homeowner association. And I was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The days following the homeowner association meeting were a whirlwind of emotions and escalating tensions. Karen's accusations about Max had spread like wildfire, turning some neighbors against us. The whispers, the judgmental stares, they were constant reminders that we were now outcasts in our own community. But I wasn't about to back down. If Karen thought she could break me with lies and manipulation, she had another thing coming. My first step was to secure legal counsel. I contacted a local attorney, Sarah Pierce, who specialized in property disputes and community association law. Sarah listened intently as I laid out the events, her pen scratching across a notepad. "This is a mess," she said bluntly, "but there's a case here. The unauthorized construction on your property is a clear violation. And if we can prove selective enforcement of the rules, we might be able to dismantle Karen's hold on the association." Her confidence bolstered my resolve. Together, we began gathering evidence: photos, documents, witness statements. I spent hours combing through the homeowner association's meeting minutes and financial records, looking for inconsistencies. It wasn't long before I struck gold. Karen had been funneling association funds into a community improvement project that conveniently benefited her own property. A new fence, a patio extension, all paid for with dues collected from residents. It was the kind of smoking gun I needed to turn the tide. But Karen wasn't going to let me expose her without a fight. One evening, as I was reviewing documents in my home office, my wife, Emily, called me to the front door. Standing on the porch were two men in suits, their expressions stern. "Mr. Gray," one of them asked, "we're here to serve you." They handed me a stack of papers, a cease and desist order filed by Karen and the homeowner association. The claim? Defamation and harassment. My hands shook as I read through the document. Karen was trying to silence me, using the legal system as her weapon. "This is ridiculous," I said, slamming the papers onto the kitchen counter. Emily placed a calming hand on my arm. "She's desperate," she said. "That means you're getting to her." Desperate or not, the lawsuit was a problem. Sarah assured me it was baseless, but it still meant more time, more money, and more stress. Meanwhile, Karen ramped up her campaign against us. Late-night visits from the police, anonymous complaints about our property. It was clear she was trying to make our lives unbearable. The breaking point came one afternoon when I arrived home to find a crew of workers digging up my backyard. A backhoe had already torn through the fence, leaving a gaping hole where Max used to play. I stormed out, furious. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted. A man in a hard hat looked up from his clipboard. "We're here to install the walkway," he said. "The homeowner association approved it." "This is my property," I yelled. "You have no right to be here." Karen appeared from nowhere, her arms crossed and a smug smile on her face. "Actually, we do," she said. "The association has the authority to make improvements for the benefit of the community. You should really read the fine print." I stepped closer, my fists clenched. "This isn't an improvement. This is theft." Karen's smile widened. "Call it what you want. It's already happening." That night, I sat in the backyard, staring at the destruction. Emily joined me, handing me a cup of coffee. "What are we going to do?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath. "We fight. We take this to court. We expose Karen for who she really is." Emily nodded, her hand squeezing mine. "We're with you." The road ahead was daunting, but I knew I couldn't let Karen win. She had pushed too far, and now it was time to push back. The battle for our home, our rights, and our dignity was far from over. The court date loomed and the pressure was immense. Karen's legal team had flooded us with documents, each one designed to intimidate and exhaust us. Sarah, however, remained steadfast. "We've got everything we need," she assured me. "Stick to the facts and let their arrogance be their downfall." The day of the trial, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Karen arrived flanked by her entourage, radiating confidence. She locked eyes with me as if to say, "You've already lost." But I wasn't backing down. The proceedings began with Karen's attorney painting me as a troublemaker who refused to follow community rules. They presented their fabricated evidence, photos of an unleashed Max, doctored noise complaints, and even a witness who claimed I'd threatened them. I could feel the weight of their lies, but Sarah remained unshaken. "Your Honor," Sarah began during our defense, "what we have here is not a resident refusing to follow rules, but an association abusing its power." She laid out the evidence we'd gathered, the unauthorized walkway construction, the selective enforcement of fines, and the financial records showing Karen's misuse of community funds. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat as Sarah presented the photographs of her newly renovated backyard, funded by community improvements. The judge frowned, clearly unimpressed by Karen's actions. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Sarah called me to the stand. "Mr. Gray, can you explain how these actions have impacted your family?" she asked. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. "This has been a nightmare," I said. "My family moved here for peace and stability, but instead we've been harassed, lied to, and had our property violated. My son cries himself to sleep because someone shot our dog, and all of this because we dared to question the authority of the homeowner association." The courtroom was silent. Even Karen's allies seemed uneasy. I looked directly at Karen. "This isn't about community standards. This is about control." Karen's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The judge allowed Sarah to present the final piece of evidence, a recording of Karen's private conversation, obtained legally by another resident who had grown tired of her tactics. In the recording, Karen bragged about using association funds for her own projects and discussed how to deal with uncooperative residents. The judge's decision was swift. The homeowner association was ordered to cease all construction on my property and return the funds they had misappropriated. Karen was removed from her position as president and faced legal consequences for her actions. The courtroom erupted in whispers as the verdict was announced, but I felt only relief. Outside, a small group of neighbors approached me. "We had no idea it was this bad," one of them said. "Thank you for standing up to her." I nodded, exhausted but vindicated. "We all deserve better than this." As we walked back to our car, Emily squeezed my hand. "It's over," she said softly. "Almost," I replied. "Now it's time to rebuild." Max, now recovering from his injury, wagged his tail as we opened the front door. For the first time in months, our home felt like a sanctuary again. The battle with the homeowner association had tested us in ways I never imagined, but it had also shown me the strength of standing up for what's right. Karen's reign was over, and justice had finally been served.